We are still admitting a few people that are coming in from the waiting room. So I'm going to give it a minute or so. As you're coming in, if you could please mute your mic so that as we're starting to record this for people that were unable to attend the live event, we're not getting any background noise or anything like that. Great. All right, well, welcome to our Columbus Audubon and Grange Insurance Audubon Center monthly program from the virtual world. This is our October monthly program. Thank you so much for coming and registering for this event and staying dedicated to this speaker series. We really appreciate it, and we're really happy to have all of you. As I was saying previously, if you didn't already hear me, please mute your mic as we're starting the program. We are recording for people that were unable to attend the live event. My name is Alyssa Rand, and I've been working with Audubon since about 2014. I'm currently on your Columbus Audubon board and working primarily with programs and volunteers. So tonight I just have a few announcements before I'm going to introduce our speaker. We have Columbus Audubon has a Calamus Swamp Workday. It is Saturday, November 14th. And to register for the workday, you just want to go over to the Columbus Audubon events calendar and you can register. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. and they're just going to meet in the parking lot at Calamus Swamp. If you haven't gotten a chance to go out to Calamus Swamp, helping with the workday would be a great first experience of Calamus Swamp. Secondly, we are in the middle of our next round of Columbus Audubon conservation grants. The conservation grant proposals are due by November 13th. You can navigate onto the Columbus Audubon website and the conservation tab will take you to information about those conservation grant proposals and how to apply and turn in your grant proposal. So if you have a project that you think would be worthy of one of our grants, or you know somebody that does, please spread the word. Like I said, the grant proposals are due November 13th. We have an exciting opportunity starting soon. It's a partnership between the Grange Insurance Audubon Center and Columbus Audubon called the Native Plant Backyard Challenge. And what we are doing is we're looking for 100 homes in central Ohio to challenge themselves to make their landscape more native plant friendly. There's a small registration fee of $25 for members or $40 for non-members, which includes a membership. So you get a discounted membership if you choose that route and you're not already a member. The registration is going to begin on November 1st and go through sometime in December. And then the kickoff for the Native Plant Challenge will be January of 2021. So we'll kind of give you the winter to create goals and think about how you want to change your space to make it more native plant, native habitat friendly. You can find the registration for this program on either the Grange Insurance Audubon Center website or the Columbus Audubon website. Our next month's program will be November 17th. So it will be a week early so as not to coincide with the Thanksgiving holiday. And our speaker will be Shana Bird, who is the Director of Conservation at Dawes Arboretum. There will be more information about this program, as well as a link to register for the Zoom event coming shortly on both GIAC and Columbus Audubon websites. And lastly, I just want to remind you that this meeting is going to be recorded. And as we go, if you have questions, it's going to be best to type your questions in the chat so that we can have a record of them and get to them at the end of the program. If you're not familiar with Zoom, at the very bottom of your screen, there's a little text box icon that says chat, and you can open that up, and then that's where you can type your questions as you have them if you think you will forget, or you can wait till the end during our question portion of the program, and then you can type your questions in the chat at that time. All right. So now I'm going to introduce our speaker for this evening. His name is Chris Kline. Christopher Kline's interest in butterflies began in 1997 when he began tagging monarch butterflies in Indiana. Since 1997, he's tagged thousands of monarchs. He has co-founded the Central Arizona Butterfly Association and founded the Southwestern Monarch Study. He also served as the butterfly specialist at the Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Garden right here in Columbus, and he's now the director at Butterfly Ridge Butterfly Conservation Center, which is in Rockbridge, Ohio. He and his wife have converted 21 acres of fields and forests into butterfly-friendly habitats there. He's also authored several books, including A Field Guide to Tropical Butterflies of American Conservatories, Butterfly Gardening with Native Plants, Butterfly Rider, Moths of Butterfly Ridge, and the Tony Spencer Mystery Series. Tonight, Chris is going to talk to us about pollinator habitat, which coincides perfectly with our kickoff to the Native Plant Backyard Challenge. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Chris Kline to our evening.
Thank you, Alyssa. Another thing that some of your participants may remember, I don't know, I was also the founding education director and volunteer coordinator at the Grange Insurance Audubon Center back in the day. And I don't know if Allison's still out there, but she sort of took my job. Actually, I gave it up. My last day was her first day, so kind of weird how things work out. I am coming to you from the beautiful Hampton Inn in Deming, New Mexico. I was expecting to be in Fort Stockton, Texas instead, but I'm sort of stranded here in the middle of a snow and freezing rainstorm. And I-10 going east out of Deming this morning was closed for 2 hours. So I thought, you know what, let's just hole up in Deming for an extra day and play it safe. So I've had a very nice, relaxing day here in beautiful Deming, New Mexico. No, every year in the autumn, I take a trip west to Phoenix and then down to South Texas, specifically looking for butterflies. And normally over the course of that trip, I'll get to observe in the neighborhood of 100 different species. And I know things are going really good in South Texas right now, so I'm kind of anxious to get there. But as far as you folks are concerned, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how to attract butterflies to your own home landscapes. And of course, I'm not sure what everybody's areas look like. I'm going to be discussing, strategies as far as if you have large plots of land that you're trying to convert to be pollinator friendly, or if you just simply have a residential lot that you want to attract more butterflies to. Hopefully we'll hit that as well. And so, let's see here. Okay, my PowerPoint's not moving. Okay, Houston, we have a problem. Let's see. How can we fix this? There we go. We figured it out. Okay, so for those of you who have never been to Butterfly Ridge, number one, shame on you. Number two, Butterfly Ridge is located here in the beautiful Hocking Hills in the hillbilly country of Ohio, located squarely between the corn and West Virginia there. For those of you who know your state park system, we are about halfway between Rock House State Park and Conkle's Hollow. And this is our trail map. And we're just going to kind of jump right into things here. And there's a very specific reason why some of these trails are red and others are black. In that at the beginning of every month, we walk a transect, and the trails that are a part of this transect are the trails that are in red. And we walk this transect beginning of every month, April through October, counting butterflies, documenting every butterfly that we see, because we want to know if the habitat changes that we're making, if the plants that we are planting, we want to know if it's actually working or not. And so this is the route that we take, and we'll just jump right into the results here as well. So this is our data over the past 6 years put into an easily understood graph here, at least I hope it is. All these bars across the bottom, that is the number of species that we recorded with each transect. The lines are the number of individual butterflies. And so the brown line here, that's the data from 2015, blue is 2016, green is 2017, this more orangish color is 2018, the black is 2019, and the yellow is 2020. And so what the data shows is that we had a very regular increase in our butterfly population basically until this year. And this year we saw a bit of a dip. And I'm not sure how many of you keep track of butterfly activity in your yards, even if it's anecdotal, but there's a lot of people who saw a dip in butterfly activity this year, not just in central and southeast Ohio, but actually across the country. Beginning of July, on a Facebook page I'm a part of, and it has like a national following, I put out the question, how would you compare your butterfly activity this year compared to normal? Would you consider it poor, average, or better than average? And the 520 something responses that I received, 500 of those responses were poor. That butterfly activity this year was poor compared to the normal. And those were people from all over the country. So in all honesty, this was a fairly lousy butterfly year. And another chart here that will also kind of show that out. One of the things that we do at Butterfly Ridge, every July, we do a Athens County butterfly count. And two of the sites that we visit, one of those sites is the Trimble Community Forest, which is in Gloucester, Ohio, just outside of Gloucester. And the other site is the Ridges, which is the former Ohio State Mental Hospital grounds down in Athens. And we visit those sites. It's actually the first Saturday after the 4th of July. So what I've been doing over the years is comparing data at those two sites compared against what we get at Butterfly Ridge in our July transect. One of the things that you'll find, and we'll compare 2015 through 2019 first. From 2015 to 2019, Trimble Community Forest saw a definite decline in the butterfly population. The ridges saw a decline in the butterfly population. At Butterfly Ridge, we saw an increase. So for example, Trimble's decline was 43%, the ridge's decline was 28%. We showed an increase of 195%, okay? Because when I present this kind of data, for example, in that previous slide, there's always, excuse me, there's always somebody in the back of the room who wants to say, yeah, but this year or that year or whatever was an especially good year and blah, 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 blah. Well, what I'm wanting to show with this particular graph is that our butterfly population at Butterfly Ridge is going the opposite direction of what it's going in Athens County. Now, if you add this year into the mix, as I said, this year was a lousy year. So if you compare just from 2019 last year to this year, 2020, that'll be the black numbers here. Trimble Community Forest was down 70% compared to last year. Okay, not compared to 2015, just compared to last year. The ridges was down 10%. At Butterfly Ridge, we were down 44%. So this year was a rough butterfly year. Now, if you compare it all the way back to when we started collecting data back in 2015, Trimble's now down 83% from 2015. The ridges is down 36%, and we're still showing an increase. What that tells me is that we're doing something right. Okay, in the way that we've tinkered with habitat and the plants that we've planted, obviously we're doing something right because it's reflected in the number of butterflies that we see. So what is it that we've done? And the next little bit of the presentation is going to kind of focus, be most helpful for folks who are looking to convert more large areas of land to make more pollinator friendly. And something I probably should have shared before now, Butterfly Ridge is 21 acres in size, and we've tinkered with most of those acres, okay? And we're very fortunate in that we know quite a lot about the history of the site because the site's been in my family since 1863. So we know the land use of the area dating back pretty close to 100 years. We've got a pretty good understanding of how the property's been used. One of the things that we have done, and once again, in this next little bit, it's what I would consider macro habitat creation. So once again, habitat creation on a large scale. And one of the main things that we've done is what I refer to as woodland openings. So this scene that you're looking at right now, over many of the generations that my family had this property, this scene that you are looking at was actually an agricultural field. And it was maintained as a field through either agriculture or later as annual mowing. And then my dad, about 20 years ago, decided he was tired of mowing it once a year and he let all the trees grow up. And now we don't necessarily have anything against trees, they just make lousy butterfly habitat. So over the course of the last 5 years, what we've done is we've taken this particular site and we have cut holes into it. This happens to be my son-in-law, and this was his first time operating a chainsaw. And I'm proud to say that he still has all of his parts and that my daughter still talks to us. So it was all good. But what we did was we started clearing a series of 1/10 to 1/4 acre openings in that woods that used to be field. Okay, so now that scene there looks like that right there. Okay. And there are particular butterflies that have greatly benefited from creating these little woodland openings. And so, for example, some of those butterflies are these little guys, the northern pearly eye. And with as horrible of a butterfly year as this year was, these little guys were a definite success story for this year. This was without a doubt the best northern pearly eye season that we have had. And they really, really like those little woodland openings in that area that we call the checkerboard. Some other butterflies that really prefer those little woodland openings. This little guy is a Carolina satyr. A lot of people, when they see him, they think he's a moth, primarily because of his kind of drab color. They're tiny, in profile, about the size of a thumbnail or so. So they are tiny, but they are in fact a true butterfly. A cousin of theirs, the little wood satyr, they especially like those woodland openings as well. So these three species have done really, really well through creating these woodland openings that we've done. Now, another macro habitat project that we've worked on is we've created a prairie. And this abused old field here, my dad was, how to put it, an obsessive mower. I guess we can put it that way. So he had a tendency to mow areas to within an inch of their life. And so what we did, this entire ridge top, and there's some back here that you can't see, the entire ridge top is about 1.5 acres in size. And we took most of that ridge top back to bare dirt. We disked it in the fall to break up the sod. And then in the spring, we tilled and tilled and tilled and tilled. The reason we did all that tilling was so that we could give weed seeds in the seed bank a chance to germinate, pop up, and then we go through, we till again, chop their little lives out from under them, and we just keep doing that. We are not big fans of using herbicide to knock down the prairie because unfortunately there's pretty much always collateral damage when you're using herbicide, and we wanted to reduce that risk. And the best way we could figure out to reduce that risk was to not do it at all. So we took all that ridge top back to bare dirt. We did this over a 2-year period. With each tilling, we added lime. So for the entire acre and a half to date, we've added close to 5 tons of lime. And that is because that field that you see there, the soil is horrendous. And we had a gentleman from the Fairfield County Soil and Water who came out and advised us and helped us with this project. And he had commented how normally the first step in the project is to do a soil test. And then he saw all that broom sedge out there and that decided that basically a soil test would be a waste of time because he could tell right away that our soils were really super acidic just based on the presence of all that broom sedge. And so once again, over the course of 2 years, we added 5 tons of lime out here to try to bring the soil pH up. This particular scene, this is my son rolling the new prairie, compacting the soil to a degree to help the new seed be in better contact with the soil. And that old disgusting abused field now looks like this. And this picture was taken, I want to say July-ish. Realize a lot of these grasses are big blue stem. So height-wise, if you go look now, they're up here somewhere. Okay, a lot of those grasses get 8-10 feet tall. And so we're really pleased with how that prairie has come along. And some of the butterfly species who have benefited from the work that we've done out there, once again, this common wood nymph is a whole lot like that northern pearly eye. in that despite this being a horrible year for butterflies, these common wood nymphs had a fabulous year. And I can't begin to tell you how many of these guys that we saw over the course of the season out there in the prairie. We also tend to get a lot of grass skippers out in the prairie. Now, with our grass skippers, these are my poster child for how people should manage their fields. Because what these little guys do, and I'm going to actually go backwards just a smidge here. So these grass skippers, if you look at all the stems of my big blue stem here, okay, those grass skippers, they overwinter as caterpillars inside those grass stems. So needless to say, if you go through in the fall and you mow your fields, you are chopping up all of next year's grass skippers, including this northern broken dash skipper. And I would really rather you not do that. So one of the things that we really strongly encourage people to do is wait to mow until May. For a lot of people, that is such a serious break with tradition that it's really hard for them. I mean, it's almost like trying to convince them to celebrate Christmas in June. Okay, it just doesn't work for them. However, once again, even though tradition is to mow your fields in the fall, when you do that, you are chopping up all of next year's skippers, okay? Because what will happen is these little guys, let's go back to that prairie scene again. So what happens in the spring, when the weather starts to warm up and the grasses start to green up, what those little caterpillars will do is they will crawl out of that hollow stem. They'll go down here to the base of the grass where it's starting to green up, and they will start feeding on that new growth. So if you go through this field in May and you set your mower deck, kind of high, what you'll end up doing is mowing over the top of all those little caterpillars that are down at the base of those plants, and nobody gets chopped up, okay? And it seems to me a fairly, if you want to consider it an inconvenience, it seems like a fairly minimal inconvenience, asking folks just to wait until spring to do their mowing. And the butterflies will be so much better off if you do that. Another butterfly that we get a whole lot in the prairie when the prairie is at its peak flowering time, which is normally late June and into July, are these little guys. These are silver spotted skippers, and he happens to be sipping nectar from a wild bergamot there. So that's another butterfly that we tend to see a whole lot out in our prairie. Now, we also have a wetland. We didn't do anything in specific to create that wetland. It was already there. And we did have concern as to whether our wetland was wet enough. And I'll be honest, this year, 2020, our wetland was not wet enough because it pretty much quit raining in May and things dried up. But we had a hydrologist from Hocking College who came out and visited us. He brought his little soil probe tool with him, and this was back in probably 2017. And he only dug down maybe 3 inches and he hit water in our wetland. And he's like, Chris, you guys got plenty of water, plant whatever you want to plant. And so what we planted was this. This is cup plant. It's in the same group of plants as like prairie dock and compass plant. And as you can see, when the cup plant is blooming, I mean, it is absolutely a butterfly magnet. To give you an idea how strong of a magnet, and unfortunately I don't have any video or anything like that. I don't have any video to show, but in August of 2019, in a stretch of about 100 feet in our wetland, we counted just shy of 80 swallowtail butterflies nectaring on this cup plant. Okay, that's how strong of a nectar source that it is. These here are tiger swallowtails, if you don't know your butterflies real well. And once again, all of this cut plant we planted. We grew it from seed. We have a couple little hoop greenhouses. We grew it from seed, planted it, and it has done great. And even with as dry as 2020 was, it still did great. So we've been very pleased with that. Now, we have also created habitat on a micro level, okay? Once again, what I've been discussing so far has been creating habitat, you know, at the acre, multi-acre level. The micro habitat creation, that's creating habitat within a matter of a few square feet, believe it or not. And so, for example, this is that checkerboard area that I'd first shown you when my son-in-law was trying to cut his foot off with the chainsaw there. And well, what we do in those areas with all that brush that we cut is most of that brush gets put into piles, okay? And it's not that we're lazy and don't know what to do with our brush, or that we don't want to go the effort of cleaning up our brush or anything. These brush piles are very intentional in that certain butterflies in Ohio actually overwinter as adult butterflies, okay? And one of those butterflies is the eastern comma. And so this was the butterfly that we were seeing without a doubt the greatest abundance there early and middle October before we closed for the season. And so what these commas do is they hang out in these brush piles, and that's where they spend the winter. And those brush piles help to insulate them from the cold and the snow and whatnot. And so to give you an idea, our first butterfly sighting of 2019 was not this particular comma, okay? This picture was taken in the fall, as evidenced by the asters blooming. But our first butterfly sighting in 2019 was on February 27, and it was actually 3 of these commas, because what will happen when you get 2 or 3 warm days in a row in February, these guys will come out, fly around, do their butterfly thing. And then when it turns cold again, they go back in their brush pile and wait for the next warm spell to come along. And so once again, our first sighting in 2019 was February 27. Now this year, 2020, our first sighting was not until March 28th. And a part of that was, actually pretty much all of that, was weather related, because our 2 or 3 day warm spell in February came at the middle of the month. I'm sorry, came at the beginning of the month. Okay, it came a little bit too early. And then it turned cold, and it stayed cold throughout the rest of February and throughout most of March. So hence the reason why our commas were so late coming back out of their brush piles this year. By the way, a fun thing that Butterfly Ridge does every year is we have our first butterfly contest. And we usually do this through our Facebook page, but we open it up for people to guess what the first butterfly species will be and the date that that first sighting will be. And you send me your guess, and if you are correct, you win a gift certificate in the Butterfly Ridge gift shop. Unfortunately, nobody last year got the gift certificate because we all thought that the first sighting would be long before March 28. So nobody picked March 28. But, you know, 2021 is going to be a new and hopefully better year. In more than one perspective, it's hopefully going to be a better year. So another micro habitat project that we did, this building right here, this is our outhouse. In fact, we say it's the nicest outhouse in Hocking County. We haven't had anybody argue that yet, so I'm not quite sure what that means, but nobody's told me it's not the nicest outhouse in Hocking County. And so when our excavator, when he set the tank, he actually set the tank a little on the low side. So something you can't see is that the hill that surrounds the outhouse, there's a slope and all the water drains off of that hill towards the outhouse. So we tend to have water collect at the base of the outhouse. Well, we could have said, gee, what are we going to do with all this water? Instead, we looked at it as a habitat opportunity, granted a small one, okay? And so what we did, all these green plants you see right here, that is false nettle. And false nettle doesn't mind being in the shade, and it doesn't mind having its feet wet. And so therefore we figured, okay, well, that's the perfect plant to plant around the base of the outhouse and take advantage of all that moisture that was tending to accumulate there at the base of the outhouse. Another reason why we picked the false nettle is because it is the caterpillar host plant for this butterfly, the red admiral. And so once again, we took a potentially problem space that was about a foot wide and about 15 feet long, and we turned it into a habitat opportunity for these little guys. And we've been very blessed in that. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many red admiral caterpillars that we've raised in our caterpillar house, and those are caterpillars that we found on the nettle that was growing around the outhouse. So once again, we could have looked at it as a problem, or we could have looked at it as a habitat opportunity. Another one of those, what I call micro habitat opportunities that we had. So this is our parking lot up here. Once again, the nicest outhouse in Hocking County here. This blue building is our nature center. And as you can see, our nature center is actually built on stilts. Once again, because all the water from this hillside drains past the outhouse and actually drains underneath the building. And as we thought about it, we thought, that's sort of kind of a wasted resource. And so we asked our excavator, and this was, before we opened, we asked our excavator that did our parking lot for us, could he build us a trench, just a one bucket wide trench right through here between the parking lot and the building. Just a small little trench that would collect the water that ran off of the hillside, which he, very nicely did for us. And we have since planted cut plant in here. There's a lot of cut plant in here now. The angle of my picture, you can't really see very well, but we've actually got a button bush planted down in here. We've got more false nettle in here. We've got cardinal flower in the bottom of the trench here. So once again, we took a potential problem area, and with, a 10-minute effort from our excavator, or, I could have done it with a shovel in 20 minutes, we created a habitat opportunity. We had a wet spot, and instead of pulling our hair out, what do we do with this wet spot, trying to get it to drain? We actually kind of embraced the wet spot and made it wetter so that we could plant water-loving plants in that space. And so once again, we've got a lot of cut plant in there now, a lot of cardinal flower, 2 really nice button bushes. We actually, at this very far end down here, we have willow planted. So once again, we took advantage of what was potentially a problem situation. Where's my little arrow? There we go. Now, in addition to creating habitat, and one of the things I tend to tell people, you have to think like a butterfly, okay? You have to understand what butterflies want. And so, we know some butterflies like that large open space. So we created 1.5 acres of prairie. We know that they like woodland edges and small woodland openings. So we created all those little 1/10, 1/4 acre openings in what we call the checkerboard. We know that some of them need shelter from the cold, so we leave brush piles out there for them. You could actually also use rock piles, brick piles for that sort of thing as well. Just something that gets them out of the wind, gets them out of the snow, that sort of thing. And then we also planted good nectar plants and good caterpillar host plants to the tune of roughly 5,000 of those plants since 2015. And of those 5,000 plus plants, we have grown all of them, but maybe 50. So that would be what, 1%, if I got my math right. So 99% of those plants we've grown from seed. And once again, in our two little hoop greenhouses, each greenhouse is like 12 by 20, so they're not great big giant things. They do not have supplementary heat, anything like that. We just take advantage of passive heating techniques. We put extra plastic over the greenhouses. We have large black trash cans in each greenhouse filled with water. So they absorb all that heat during the daytime when it's sunny, and then they can release it at night, and that helps keep things warm. We do have a portable solar generator attached to one greenhouse that we can run a heat map off of for when we start the seeds. But once again, most of our heating techniques are just very passive, easy to do things. We have never lost a plant to getting too cold. We have lost plants to getting too hot. We have never lost a plant to getting too cold. Some of the things that we have grown, and to give you some ideas of, once again, in your own residential landscape, based on what kind of a landscape you have, some plants that you can use. And once again, we've done all of these. All of these we have either planted or transplanted out at Butterfly Ridge. So for example, poke milkweed, that's this guy up here. It is one of the few shade tolerant milkweed species. We have this in a little woodland opening that's next to our tree house. And yes, we have found monarch caterpillars on it before. As far as a nectar source, the butterflies don't really go for it all that much. The bees really like it though. If you're a bee person, the big bees, the bumblebees, they really like it. Spice bush, which is this plant right here. It is a host for the spice bush swallowtail. So if you want something shrubby that will grow in shade, spice bush is a tremendous choice. False nettle, we've already talked a little bit about that. Host plant for the red admiral, easy to grow. I mean, it's almost like cheating. It's so easy to grow. You don't have to treat the seeds. You don't have to winterize the seeds. You just collect the seeds, you throw them on the dirt, and it grows. For those of you who claim to have black thumbs, I challenge you to grow false nettle. Okay. Cardinal flower, once again, we've grown a lot of cardinal flower. It's an excellent nectar source, especially for bigger butterflies. And then the violets down here, while we've never grown violets from seed, we have transplanted violets from deep into the woods to more towards the edge of the woods. They are the caterpillar host plant for the different fritillary butterfly species. And so we tried to get those violets into a location where the butterflies would be better able to find them. Now, if you have a sunny, dry location instead, and I'm not sure what I was thinking. I don't remember putting a cardinal flower there. Cardinal flower should not be there. It doesn't like dry sites. So I'm not sure what it is that I skipped out on. Mountain mint, that's an excellent choice. It's in the mint family. The smaller butterflies like it. The bees absolutely love it. I mean, if you're a bee nerd, mountain mint, you absolutely have to grow that. The bergamot, another member of the mint family, total butterfly magnet as far as being a nectar plant. You already saw a picture earlier with that silver spot skipper taking advantage of the bergamot. The butterfly weed, that's a milkweed that really likes those sunny, dry locations. So I call it a twofer because you have both the host and the nectar component with it. Down here, the New England aster, that's a good late season nectar plant. Plus, it's also a host plant for the pearl crescent butterfly, little tiny orange dudes that are pretty common. I did not have good pictures of the false indigo and the bush clover, both of which we started from seed once again, both of which are doing really well in our prairie, especially the bush clover is doing really well. The false indigo was kind of interesting because it seemed like in the previous years it wasn't doing as strong as I would have liked it to. And then this year, 2020, it just exploded and looked great. So, sometimes you just got to give things time. Now, if your site is sunny and damp, well, we've got some choices for that kind of an environment as well. Don't have a picture of the cardinal flower. You've seen that several times before. The cup plant, you saw that before also. The ironweed. Now it's a taller wildflower, taller native perennial. It'll get 5, 6, 7 feet tall. Once again, absolute nectar butterfly magnet, and it doesn't mind having its feet wet. The wing stem is another one that doesn't mind having its feet wet. Maybe not as strong of a nectar plant. Sometimes the little skippers and the little hair streaks tend to be the ones that go to the wing stem. The wing stem is also the caterpillar host plant for the silvery checker spot butterfly. Milkweed, the common milkweed. Really the nice thing about common milkweed is it's probably the most flexible of all the milkweeds. I've seen it grow in partial shade. I've seen it grow in full sun. I've seen it grow on relatively dry sites. I've seen it grow with its feet wet. So it's pretty flexible. It doesn't really care where it is. Over here, this is mist flower, fun little native perennial. The little skipper butterflies and the pearl crescents just go all over this stuff late in the summer. And then another milkweed down here is the swamp milkweed. So once again, it's going to be another twofer. It'll be a host plant for the monarchs, but it's also a good nectar source as well. Now, another thing that we have done, which would be super, super easy for you to do in your home landscape, is we have created what we call bait sticks, okay? So if you come visit Butterfly Ridge, there's a really strong chance that you're gonna see something that looks like somebody's hanging pieces of firewood in trees, okay? And in fact, that's what it is. We screw eye screws into pieces of firewood, use old electrical wire that we have found in different places, and we hang them out of trees. And the butterflies, as you can see, we got 3 commas here. The butterflies absolutely love it, okay? Especially the commas, the question marks. A lot of those late season and really early season butterflies tend to go to the bait sticks more so. This brown looking goo on the stick, okay, that is the bait. And the recipe for the bait, okay, so jot this down. By the way, this is supposed to be brown sugar. I couldn't find a nice picture of a bag of brown sugar, so here you go. So this is brown sugar. These, of course, are wonderfully black rotten bananas. And this is Modelo Negra, dark imported Mexican beer. And so what we do is we use roughly equal amounts of these 3. Normally, in a normal batch that we make, We will use, 8 to 10 rotten bananas. We will use about half a pound to 2/3 of a pound of brown sugar, and we will use 1 bottle of beer. And then we use our smoothie machine to whip it all up together. It actually tastes fairly good, believe it or not. I don't mind licking the bowl on that one. And then afterwards, when we've mixed it all up, and usually we whip up about half a gallon at a time, then we add a packet of yeast to the mix. And what the yeast does is it actually keeps this mess brewing, if you will. Okay, it actually helps the fermentation process. Because believe it or not, the reason the butterflies are attracted to the bait is primarily 2 things. A, it's the sugar content, and B, it's the alcohol content. And it is largely the butterflies that are naturally tree sap and rotten fruit feeders. You don't normally get flower nectar feeders going to the bait. So once again, normally what you get are the tree sap and the rotten fruit feeders. So the more you can increase that alcohol content, typically the better they like it. Now, I don't know that I'd go adding vodka or something like that to the mix. Once again, our recipe tends to work pretty good. And then we'll let it, once we add that yeast, we try to set it aside into a warm area, and we'll let it keep cooking for 3 or 4 weeks, trying to get it plenty strong. And once again, the commas and the question marks and the red admirals just think this stuff's the best thing since sliced bread. And once again, I don't think it's too bad either. So that's the butterfly bait that we use. Now, as I've shown you, we like to keep track of data. We're data nerds out at Butterfly Ridge. And so to date, we have recorded 63 different species of butterflies at Butterfly Ridge. Now, we don't get 63 species every year. And among those 63, for example, one of them is American copper that we haven't actually seen in probably 4 years now. The first year that we started keeping data, they were fairly common, and then we haven't seen them since. Dusted skipper is among those 63, and it's actually a species of concern in Ohio, and we saw one of them, and that was in 2018, and we haven't seen one since. But once again, 63 species that we have seen at our site. We have documented 769 moth species at our site. I finally got my numbers caught up from this year. Just this year, we had 633 species, I think it was just this year. And I wanted to share just a little bit about our moths because personally, I think our moths are really cool. A lot of folks, when they think of moths, they just think of the little annoying brown things that keep buzzing you when you're trying to get into the back door at night, We get some really seriously cool moths. And one of the ways that we are able to document all these guys is that we do moth lighting. We call it Saturday Night Lights. We do it during the summer, June through August, every Saturday night, with the exception of the first Saturday of the month. That's because I like to get some sleep too on the weekend. This picture was taken actually in 2019. Our moth lighting in 2020 looked much the same, except everybody was wearing masks. But we go 9 p.m. until midnight. If moth activity is really, really good, these folks will try to talk me into keeping the lights on until 12:45 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And every now and then I go along with that. Here's some of our moths. This particular collection are what we call micro moths. So realize these little guys from head to tail, the biggest here is roughly 1/4 of an inch long, okay? Some of them you would swear up and down were just a speck of dirt on the sheet, okay? You never have any idea it's actually a living thing until until you get the camera out and take a picture of the speck of dirt and you find
Hi, everyone. I apologize for the technical difficulties you're having here. Please be patient as we try to reconnect with Chris here. We are not entirely sure what is going on. Thank you for your patience. Hi, everyone. This is Jim Pallas, chapter president here. I apologize for the issues we're experiencing here, but we are not able to reconnect with Chris at the moment. Fortunately, he was nearing the end of his presentation. So if you have any last minute questions, I encourage you to submit them to the chat. If there are any that we are unable to answer right now, we can send them to Chris, and then we can forward the answers to all participants. Oh, and as I'm saying this, Chris might be back. So disregard everything I just said, and let's see if we can get him reconnected.
Hey,
Hey there.
I think I'm almost back.
Great.
I think maybe it's all this snow here in Deming, New Mexico messed up my internet or something. I don't know. Not sure if they ever had snow before. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so can you see that?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, then we will quickly try to pick up where we left off. Okay, there we go. So yeah, these are some of our micro moths. And once again, these little guys, from head to tail, or most of them aren't even 1/4 of an inch long. This little guy here is called the astronomer because of all these little silvery blue spots somebody thought looked like stars. Primrose coachillid here. Let me find my pointer. There we go. So Primrose coachillid here. It's another one of those that has a common name. It does not have a scientific name at this point. Orange-headed apicalima is actually one of my favorite. I just like that whole kind of red and orange checkerboard look on him. This is also one of my favorites, the Solidago root moth. For those of you who don't know your plant scientific names, we could call it the goldenrod root moth. And once again, I just love the striping on this little guy. Now moving on to some bigger moths, and realize we're just scratching the surface here. I'm not going to show you 769 pictures of moths, much to your delight probably. Oh, Carolyn's upset at me. So this is one of the slug moths that we get fairly frequently, called the smaller parasa. I'm a sucker for a green bug. I'm not sure why, but I do like green bugs. The zebra concholotes, for those of you who are more into the black and white striping thing. Another one of my favorites, the dark banded geometer. We don't get these very often. I think we've had 2 in the last 5 years, so I tend to take lots of pictures of them. Now this is probably pretty much everybody else's favorite, not necessarily my favorite, but everybody else likes these guys, the Luna moth. They are a fairly regular bug at our sheets at night. Last year was a tough year for Lunas, but then they rebounded this year. Another fairly rare moth that we have had a time or two is the huckleberry sphinx. I really like the pink on these guys. And then our final one is another pink one. This is possibly the rarest moth that we have had, the pink prominent. Very few sightings of that throughout Ohio. The question is are they a rare moth or are they a rarely seen moth? Because they may be out there, you know, in massive numbers, but they choose not to come to lights and whatnot. And not to be confused down here with the rosy maple moth, which is another one of my favorites. And the rosy maple is the one that I tell people about when they try to convince me that moths are nothing but just little dull, boring brown and gray things that pester you when you're trying to get in the back door at night. A lot of people don't realize how moths can be every bit as colorful as what butterflies are. So just a few of the moths that we've had out at Butterfly Ridge. For 2021, and we're wrapping up here, we're open April 15 through October 15. That's our normal schedule. Now this year, because of COVID, we did not open until May 15 this year, but we're hoping, okay, next year will be April 15. We will be open every day but Tuesday next year. We normally have guided tours every day at 1 and 3 in the afternoon, where we take you around the trail, pointing out butterflies and what other cool stuff that we happen to find. Once again, we will be doing moth lighting. Once again, that'll be Saturdays, June through August, with the exception of the first Saturday of the month, 9 p.m. through midnight. Now, something that those of you who are participating in this native backyard plant challenge thing that Alyssa was talking about, something that we started on Facebook. It's called the Ohio Native Plant Seed Exchange. We started that 2 years ago. We are now up over 2,000 members on that page. The whole idea behind the page, I don't know how many of you have ever gone shopping for native plants before. There are very few good quality native plant nurseries in Ohio, and native plants tend to be expensive. So we wanted to create a forum by which people could start gardening with native plants, but not break the bank doing it. And so on Facebook, we developed this Ohio Native Plant Seed Exchange. And the whole idea is it's a forum that people can trade seeds back and forth with each other. There's only 2 rules. Rule number 1 is Any plants that are shared, discussed, has to be native to Ohio. Rule number 2, no money's allowed to change hands. Okay, so before I left on my trip, I sent out, oh jeepers, I don't know, 20 or so envelopes of seeds to different people. So once again, it kind of gives people an opportunity to kind of get their feet wet with gardening with native plants. And for a lot of folks on the exchange, if you're still new to native plants and you don't necessarily have seed that you can trade back and forth, you know, I'm okay with that. Someday you will. Okay, so everybody's got to start somewhere. And then of course, we always like for folks to consider us when it's holiday shopping time. I'm just going to ask that you not consider us until I get back from Texas, which will be roughly November 8th. So I'll get our website updated by then, and you can find your favorite books and earrings and all kinds of good stuff there. And by the way, the talk today, if you plant it, they will come. That's also a book that I've written in a whole lot more detail than what I could give to you folks in basically an hour with a 10-minute technology interruption. So if you want to know, you know, more of the gory details, that if you plant it, they will come book is a good option as well. And this is me. This is my contact information. If you want to get a hold of me directly, this is how you do it. If you want to find Butterfly Ridge, even though we're actually closed until April 15, there's our address. And so if I know there was supposed to be a format for folks who had questions, and so I guess I'm ready to move on to whoever the official question asker person is.
So we had a couple questions in the chat, Chris, and it looked like a few different people answered them as we kind of went along. People were definitely asking about your bait recipe.
Okay.
Looked like the person who responded, that's what I had written down too. So maybe that's something we can send out afterwards.
Sure.
Mail, just so people have that. Let me check and see if anything else has come in. I don't see any new questions. Let me open up. It doesn't look like I see any hands raised or.
The only question I
There's
see
one.
from back from the beginning was a question about seeing hummingbirds at your cardinal flower also. If you ever see that.
Yes, we do get hummingbirds visiting the cardinal flower. Believe it or not, we've also observed hummingbirds visiting the ironweed as well. And then a plant that I did not mention that we have on site that the hummingbirds absolutely adore. It is a native vining honeysuckle. I think the common name I want to say is trumpet honeysuckle. The scientific name is Lonicera sempervirens. And once again, that's a native honeysuckle. And it has a real bright kind of orangish red tubular flower that the hummingbirds absolutely love as well.
And then another question came in, why do you hang the bait stick instead of just putting the bait like directly onto a tree branch?
Well, because it's a little bit easier for us to manage. We can always take them down if we need to, relocate things. I guess we probably could paint the bait on a tree branch as well, although our bait tends to be somewhat on the runny side. So the concern I would have is the bait would run down the side of the tree and wouldn't necessarily stay put where we put it. Whereas with the sticks sitting relatively horizontal, we don't have to worry about the bait going anywhere.
Thank you. Another question that I see here, what are some plant species you recommend planting in the small clearings in the woods?
Well, in all honesty, we haven't really planted much in our small clearings. We're just kind of letting nature handle that. I would think that the plant list I gave for the sunny dry site would probably be as good of list as any. So your butterfly weed in a woodland opening, butterfly weed would be a good choice. The mountain mints would be a good choice. Bergamot would be a good choice. So yeah, I would probably refer to that sunny dry list for those little woodland openings. But I think the reason why our woodland openings have done so well is because we let, well, it's two things. Number one is we let a lot of the native grasses kind of reoccupy those spaces. And number two, we work very actively to keep tree species out. So myself, my interns, that's one of our tasks that we do every summer. Any woodies that are trying to move back into those woodland openings, they get, depending on how big they are, they get either dug up or cut off, at soil level at the base.
And there was another comment about the bait sticks. Do you hang them horizontally or vertically from trees?
Will you hang them horizontally? Now, one thing I also I didn't specifically mention with the bait sticks is like I said, we use the Modelo Negra beer. And there's a reason why beyond the fact that it's my favorite. And that is because you want to use a dark imported beer because A, dark beers have more goodies in them and they're therefore more enticing to the butterflies. B, imported beers don't have to go through the pasteurization process. And so therefore you're not killing all the goodies that are in the beer. So, if you just break open a can of Bud Light and pour it on the stick, I'm not sure that it would be very effective. So normally we use the Modelo Negra. If we can't find any locally, then we'll use Guinness Extra Stout instead.
All right, the next question is about when trying to let natives self-seed, how important is it that the seed make immediate contact with the soil? Is there such a thing as too much leaf litter or leaves that are so deep that the self-seeding won't happen?
Yeah, that can be an issue, and it's actually an issue that we're currently facing in our prairie. If I had it to do over again, I would do my prairie a little bit differently. When we planted the prairie, we used approximately 75% tall grass seed and 25% short grass. If I had it to do over again, I would have reversed those numbers. I would have gone 75% short grass, 25% tall, because one of the problems that we now have is our prairies are just so thick that, yeah, A, it's hard for butterflies to find wildflowers in there, late summer. It's also hard to get new seed germination, if you will, in those prairies because it's hard for the seed to make it through all the other stuff to get down to the soil. So that is one change I would make. One of the things that we are doing, and this past year, 2020, was our first effort at it. So I'm not sure how successful yet, our effort will be, is we're actually digging up small portions of that prairie and basically reseeding them with exclusively short grasses and lots of wildflowers. And so we're going to see if we can't little by little try to take some chunks out of that tall, really thick stuff. But yeah, that is an issue when that prairie gets really well established. It'll be hard to get, new things introduced. It'll be hard to get, wildflowers that are in there. It'll be hard to get them to spread if the seed has trouble getting down to the soil level.
And the next question is, do you have any problems with invasives other than in the prairie?
Yeah. Yeah, public enemy number one this year was privet, and my interns spent close to a week solid digging and removing privet out of our wetland. Small privets are really easy and just pull them up. I mean, they don't have real well-established root systems yet. But we had some big privet in there. That took a whole lot more effort. Believe it or not, we have cut down privet in our wetland that the stump for the privet was approaching 14 to 16 inches across. So privet is, like I said, is this year was public enemy number one. Japanese honeysuckle, in all honesty, we've given up fighting that battle because I don't see any path to victory with that one. Japanese honeysuckle is all over on the Butterfly Ridge site, and I don't, short of detonating a nuclear bomb or something, I don't see how we could possibly get rid of all of it. We continue to tackle multiflora rose with some success on that one. It's just, painful to deal with. The most recent one that we are really struggling with is the Japanese stilt grass. And every year we pull it out before it sets seed. And every year it comes back more lush than it was before. So I'm kind of having to rethink maybe how we tackle that one as well. We may have to once again kind of go nuclear with herbicide to do away with that. I would really rather find something else if we possibly can. But once again, every year, despite our best efforts, the stilt grass just keeps coming back stronger and stronger.
All right. And the next question was, do you have any ideas for the hell strip, or the bit of land, as it's called, between the sidewalk and the city streets, where it seems to be like difficult soil, and any recommendations for if you do plant natives there, how to communicate their worth to neighbors who might think they look weedy?
Yeah, that can be quite the challenge there. And I would probably choose the showier natives, things that people are potentially, going to garden centers and buying, not even knowing that they're buying natives. So for example, things like butterfly weed, things like bergamot, mountain mint stays fairly compact and well behaved. That might be another good one to try. But no, I mean, the person asking the question is right. Lots of times the neighbors, all they understand is Kentucky bluegrass that's mowed on a 5-day interval. And sometimes that education piece is hard. Also, if you happen to live in a homeowners association, God love you, that's another tough nut to crack, to convince them that anything other than Kentucky bluegrass is valuable. But like I said, I would start with the more showy species like the butterfly weeds, the bergamots, the mountain mints, the things that look like they were potentially purchased at the store, and stay relatively well behaved.
All right, well, I'm gonna hand the rest of the questions over to Allison, and Jim will sign you guys off. I'm gonna go put my baby to bed. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. She has important mom duties.
Of course.
Okay, the next question that we have is from Carol Clark. What toxins come from the various host plants?
Toxins. I assume we're talking about, for example, the cardiac glycosides in the milkweed, maybe. Yeah, I mean, if you have children or pets that are grazers, you may want to scale back on the milkweed use. Although my understanding is the broadleaf milkweeds have a much lower toxicity than the real narrowleaf milkweeds like the world milkweed. And I'm not just thinking about some of the other plants that were on the list there. I can't really think of any of the others that would be considered toxic necessarily, other than the milkweeds. I mean, for example, the mints, I mean, a lot of folks use those as, seasonings and different things. So I don't think those would be a problem. The ironweeds, the wing stems, those sorts of things, I wouldn't foresee those having a toxicity issue either.
Okay. Are there species of moths and butterflies that live strictly in forests?
Sorta. So for example, at Butterfly Ridge, butterfly wise, we have what we call banded hair streak. And the only place that we find them on site is at the wooded edge, at the edge of the clearing that's near our tree house. That's where we tend to find banded hair streaks. They use oak as their caterpillar host plant. Another butterfly species that falls into that category would be eastern pine elfin, which only lives in pine forest or pine groves. We've found them at Butterfly Ridge 2 of the last 4 years. One of the challenge with pine elfins is that they're super, super small. I mean, we're talking, fingernail size, and they typically only fly in May. And generally they like to hang out on the new growth of the pine trees. And so if your new growth is 30 feet up and you're trying to find something, the size of your fingernail, that might present certain challenges. Now, as far as moths go, one of the things that I've actually been quite fascinated by is, for example, if you consider some of the bigger moths, like the Luna moth, for example, imperial moth, regal moth, they all feed on large forest trees, walnuts and oaks and those types of trees. Yet at Butterfly Ridge, where do we get those? Okay, we actually get those coming to the sheets that are out in the middle of our prairie, okay, as far away from the trees as you can possibly get. And that's something that's kind of blown my mind a little bit, because when we first started moth lighting, I mean, that was the whole reason for setting up mothing stations at the wooded edge, was because I thought that's where we would get the best production of Luna moths and regal moths and those big guys. And I've been proven wrong. We typically get those big guys, once again, at that sheet that's, out in the middle of the prairie, out in the middle of the field. And it makes no logic to me whatsoever. But so yeah, just because a moth, or, well, especially with the moths, just because their host plant is maybe large trees, doesn't mean that you're not going to get them out in an open area.
Are there any native shrub besides spice bush that thrives in shade and is attractive for butterflies?
Viburnums have some attractiveness. I think it's some of the azure butterflies that use viburnum as a caterpillar host. And I know the viburnums will do all right in the shade. The shrubby dogwoods, the azures I know do use the shrubby dogwoods, and they can be shade tolerant as well. That's honestly, that's probably about it.
Okay. What measures do you take to keep the cup plant from spreading aggressively and taking over other areas?
Well, at this point, none, because in all honesty, we don't care if that takes over our wetland. Now, if it starts to move into like the checkerboard or something, then, we'll have to take action then, either digging it up. If that doesn't work, we may have to pull out the herbicide. But see, that's one nice thing about our site and trying to keep a more wild appearance. If the cut plant gets frisky and we get a bunch of them coming up in the wetland, well, in our book, that's actually a good thing, because I'll just pull in more and more butterflies. And for us, we don't have to worry about HOAs getting their nose bent out of shape or neighbors or anything like that. So yeah, we don't worry about it so much.
All right, well, it looks to me like that is all the questions we have in the chat right now. I personally have been to Butterfly Ridge many times. I love it down there, so I've enjoyed this talk immensely. I'm going to pass this back over to Jim just to wrap up tonight.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chris. It's great that you're able to be with us tonight, and it's awesome to hear everything you've done at Butterfly Ridge and the impact that it's actually having. For all of the viewers, if you'd like to support programs like this in the future, I encourage you to visit our website at columbusaudubon.org. And if you're not already a member, I encourage you to become one. And I hope you will join us again for next month's program with Shayna Bird of Dawes Arboretum. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your October.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks.